guys, Sue Tetzloff here with you again today in Fans of the Framework. Glad to be here today talking about the topic of the applicant pool and how can we influence that so we have a great quantity and quality of applicants to choose from when we have that open position or lots of them. Okay, so that's the topic today. If you're here live with me, pop your comment or name in the comment box there. It'd be great to see who can be with us live. And many of you, we know we have you watching these on the replay, so thanks for doing that. So let's jump right into this. Years ago, like really early in my career in leadership, now I'm talking about, well over 20, 25 years ago, there was a couple things related to this topic that really have stuck with me all of these years. So sometimes I think it's not even surprising that this is the work I do now, because, when I think about some of the things that have just been profound and caught my attention early in my career, still excite me and catch my attention today. And these two incidences that occurred well over 20 years ago had a big impact on me. One of which was I was listening in a phone conference. It was like a phone educational kind of sharing session. It was before, webinars and video conference and all of that. So it was, dating here a long time ago. And it was an organization from out east. I can't even remember what hospital it was, but they were sharing their story about how whenever they had an open position, they'd always have over 100 applicants for every open position. And that they would have applicants and new employees from this wider and wider region, bypassing, 7 other hospitals to apply and work for them. And they were known, and I'm not advocating for this, but they were known to have the lowest wages of all of those places. Yet applicants were flying by those other organizations to apply and hopefully get a job with them. Now, that was a phone conference worth showing up for. I wanted to hear that story, okay? And, now I'm not surprised when they said that the number one thing that led to that was having a great culture, a great place to work for, right? And having a reputation, a stellar reputation of being a great place to work, okay? So, and then similarly, within a year or so of that, I was at the American College of Healthcare Executives Conference. I would go there every year for, a long time. I would get there every single year, never miss the annual Congress. And I remember, being a very new leader, walking into those sessions. And in particular, I remember one very similar case study and story of an organization talking about how their applicant pool was so huge and they could be so selective over the talent that they hired because they had, again, such a stellar reputation for being a great place to work. So now I spend my career, my life, working with organizations, helping them to transform their organization to be a great place to work. And one of the great benefits and kind of rewards of doing that and getting there and building that reputation of a great place to work is having this huge applicant pool so that when you do have an open position, and you'll likely have less of them, right? Because your turnover will be less when you're that great place to work, is that even, when you do have that rare turnover, you'll be more selective. You can be more selective. So, but that's the long game, right? That doesn't happen overnight. So if you're struggling right now with the low quality or, quantity of applicants in your applicant pool right now, and you haven't gotten to that place as an organization or even a department of being a great place to work, then, obviously that's not going to help you right now to be able to improve your applicant pool, okay? So first and foremost, I want to mention that, truly the end game, the goal, if you want to have the very best applicant pool in numbers of applicants and quality of applicants, is to build that stellar reputation of being a great organization, a great place to work. And that takes commitment, that takes a plan, that takes transformational change efforts, but we know it can happen, and this is a great thing that results because of that. But let's talk about wherever you're at right now, in your reputation as an employer or as a department to work for. Let's talk about the things that you could do, maybe just start, right? Things you could do right now to help build your applicant pool, okay? So first is, let's talk about, advertising for positions. So maybe you're not the HR department, but maybe you are. We have lots of folks in here that work in that kind of role. So it's usually that department that's responsible for advertising, that formal advertising, whether it's done on your website, whether that's done in local newspapers and professional journals or whatever. However social media, that's pretty common now. However you get that word out there about working for you is really, really important. And maybe you're not the person that makes those decisions, but maybe you could talk to them, right? And here's an idea that we've seen work very, very well, is to shift that messaging that you have going out there about your open position that you're advertising for, and shift that message to be more in alignment with things like your mission, your vision, your strategies, your culture, the positives along those lines that people want to hear about, they want to know about. Those advertisements usually get stuck in things like what's the pay, what's the benefits, how to apply, and da-da-da. But, if you want to attract a high quality, different type of applicant, and we say hire for behavior, train to scale, find that right culture fit and culture add in your next hire. Well, that's what you want in your applicant pool. And so that messaging that is going out saying, hey, I got a job open, needs to not just be what are the qualifications, what are the job responsibilities, whatever, but what is it that would attract those high quality people out there to your organization, your department, that job? What are those things, right? And so so think about that in a new way, is what's that messaging that makes high performing, high behaving, amazing people, take notice in an advertisement. And it's not the use of blah, 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 okay? So an example of that years ago in the organization where Jane and I worked together on a transformational effort early on, we started to see signs of really quick growth fast. In fact, we added over 500 jobs in a very short span of a few years. So we added a whole bunch of positions and jobs. And so we were hiring like crazy, right? And so we wanted to hire great people, right? We just didn't need anybody. Upright and licensed isn't good enough, folks. We don't want to settle just because we have positions just to fill them. We don't want to pick just the best of the worst. We are growing and we're getting better. That's what we were doing. We were doing both. We were getting better and growing at the same time. And so, we created this messaging about, and it was employees that helped us do this. I have to say, it was an employee team that did this, helped us coin this language about come grow with us. There's people out there that want to be part of an organization that's having that kind of growth and excitement of growth. Some people might shy away from it. Well, that's not who we wanted. We wanted people that would come on board knowing that we are a growing organization. And so we changed our messaging about the type of people that we were looking for by changing that messaging beyond those obvious, what's the job title, what's the job description, what are the pay, what are the benefits, blah, blah, blah. And tried to really catch the people that we wanted in our applicant pool that had the attitudes, the behaviors, the attributes of a growing organization and being part of that. So that's number one, is to advertise differently and advertise based on your culture, your values, your behaviors, what's going on with your mission and strategies, and try to attract people that want that for their next job. Another tactic you can use is something that we use in other ways, but it's this idea of everybody on your team is a chief marketing officer. So everyone in your organization who works in your department, your division, your entire organization can be part of your chief marketing department, right? So they could be chief marketing officers, and they could go out there and promote your services. If you equip them and inform them and ask them to do that, they could be your, volunteer army to grow your volumes and your services. But guess what? They can also be armed and equipped and participate and engaged in helping recruit your next employees to kind of be on your recruitment team. So your chief recruitment officer. So everybody can be on that team. It isn't just the job of HR. It isn't just the job of leaders. It can be the job of everyone. So just like being a chief marketing officer, you would want to make sure that you kind of knew what jobs were open. You would want to know kind of how people applied or whatever, so that you could be willing to or able to speak up to others in the community that might be job seeking, or maybe even this. I remember lots of examples of this in the organization where I worked last, is that, we had lots of people in our organization that when they would go to a different business in town and they would encounter somebody that gave them, wild, over-the-top service, maybe at a local credit union or, a restaurant or an oil change place or, an accounting firm or whatever. If we, encountered somebody who was amazing that we thought would make a great, fit or, add some amazing things to our team, we would recruit them, right? We would say, hey, have you ever thought about working at the hospital? Do you know how to apply? Do you know how to look for what jobs are open, etc.? So, if we arm our employees with stuff like that and ask them to help us, they can be part of our recruitment team, and they get to help, build our team and our applicant pool. So that's another idea that you might want to try. Hey guys, my computer just messed up. I'm not sure what happened there. Wow, something weird just happened. I hope I'm still with you. So the other thing we can do beyond that, another thing about the chief marketing officer concept too, is just this idea of, we talk about it in the positive communication standards about managing up versus managing down. And so think about this too, is your applicant pool can be very damaged or enhanced by what your employees are saying about your organization. So another great reason for creating an amazing, stellar culture and, place to work is that the people that already work for you can then, honestly and positively talk about that experience to others, okay? So even if they're not intentionally out there marketing saying, hey, have you thought about working for our organization? Hey, do you know how to apply? I think you'd be a great person to join our team. Even if your employees aren't out there kind of, making those sales pitches like that, what you do want them to do is be talking positively about the organization as a great place to work. Because if your employees are leaving work each day and going home to their families and going home in their circle of friends and out in the community, and they're managing down the place where they work, and maybe for good reason, guess what, folks? That ain't going to help your applicant pool. So when you do advertise and you spend those dollars and you're trying to fill up, your applicant pool for open positions, you're going to have this reputation out there. So those concepts of managing up versus managing down that we teach related to, again, the patient experience and making sure that we're, putting that in a positive light out there, in the community, etc. We also want our employees, managing up the organization and being able to honestly do that. And that can positively, so that might be a tactic when you're teaching employees to be part of your chief recruiting officers. You could also teach them about the impact of being, that managing up person out in the community versus managing down, and connect the dots about how that impacts your applicant pool. So another way as a leader that you can also, right now maybe positively impact your applicant pool and grow it in quality and size is through your rounding efforts. So when you're rounding with your employees on a regular basis to build relationships, and I hope you're all doing it, so when you're having those powerful one-on-one conversations on a regular systematic basis with your employees, one of the questions you can ask is, do you know somebody that would be a great fit or could, add value and even make us better if they worked here? And, especially when you have open positions or a high vacancy rate, ask those people that are already working for you if they know people. So, make the ask of your own employees. Can you refer somebody? Do you know somebody? Can you encourage them and kind of engage them in that chief marketing or chief recruitment officer, aspect, either by giving you the information or maybe you during that conversation asking them, hey, could you reach out to them and encourage them to apply? So through your rounding, you could have that personal one-on-one conversation with employees, either on a regular basis, once in a while, or specifically when you've got, open positions or are stressed with a high vacancy rate. The other thing that tactic that we can do right away, and it's a hard one, folks. I'm going to bring it up here, leaders. This is a hard one, is if you have an employee working on your team that has chronic, persistent, horrible, bad behavior, attitude that's negatively impacting the reputation of your services or your department or organization as a place to work, you need to deal. Yeah, it's tough, guys. I know. But the 5-point conversation, and that's, for another day and another video, and we have lots of resources on that, but, there's a tactic that can work to elevate that behavior or remove that from your organization. I mean, because one person, I have seen this, one person can damage your applicant pool. One current employee and their reputation of their behavior can totally damage your application pool, okay? So I can tell you that, an example of a single department where they could post internally full-time day positions, and no one internally would sign that position, even though there were many qualified applicants for that position. No one would sign it internally because everybody knew that that person in that department was toxic. And nobody wanted to sign a position, even though they wanted day shift, it was full-time, and maybe they were part-time, and they wanted daytime, full-time. No one would sign that position because of one person. The leader, the organization has to deal with that if you're going to have an applicant pool. And if you're going to be able to run a service, long-term, pretty soon you're going to have no one. That department had to offer sign-on bonuses and recruit people from states away to fill positions in that department because of that, you guys. So your applicant pool can be negatively affected by one person. Now, what if in your organization, and it's said to be true that in organizations, 7 to 9% of employees would meet that description of chronic, persistent behavior that's at that lowest variation and level that has negative impact, so much so on the culture that it's impacting results and things like your applicant pool. So there's tools that leaders and organizations can use to deal with that. And if you're having problems with your applicant pool, maybe ask yourself why. What might be the problem with the reputation of our department, our organization? And guess what, guys? It could be the reputation of the leader. That nobody wants to work for the leader. Maybe it's you. Nobody wants to work for you. I mean, maybe it's a look in the mirror moment of, my God, maybe the reason that nobody's applying is, as a leader, I have a reputation that I don't lead well, or people don't want to work for me. Or it could be about a member of your team. So I'm just bringing it up here, guys, because we've seen it. We assess organizations all around the country of all types in healthcare, and we see all sorts of stuff, and this is some of the stuff we see. And it does and can have, an implication on the quality and the quantity of your applicant pool. All right, so I'm going to close with one more pointer of something you could do to positively influence your applicant pool. And that actually has to do with kind of your habit or behavior of what you do when you do get applicants. So for instance, let's say you're interviewing for a position and you have an open position and you have a pool of applicants and all that normal screening process and stuff is going on with HR and leaders and hopefully an employee interview panel and whatever. Is one of the things that's important about your applicant pool is you better treat all these applicants that make their way through this process very, very well, because this is the first impression they have of your organization sometimes is how they're treated once they come in your system as an applicant. So, we want this to be a great first impression, and it's not just HR's job. Hopefully, there's a lot of people along the way that they're going to encounter as part of that selection process. So we want to treat all applicants or potential applicants once they contact the organization very, very well, because they're going to talk to people, right? So even if they're not hired, if they're treated well in that process and they get a great impression of you as an organization and as an employer, they're going to talk about that even if they weren't hired, okay? And so you want to keep those people in your applicant pool because maybe that job wasn't right for them, or they weren't the best candidate for that one job, but maybe they would be for something else, and you don't want to lose them in your applicant pool. If you've started a relationship with them, you want to make it a good one, okay? And then also, in that process, making sure that we don't settle for just, accepting the best of, maybe a subpar applicant pool. So let's say I have my applicant pool and I'm a leader hiring and my employees are helping me to interview and select. And after we go through this whole process, we say, you know what, I don't think anyone, even though we looked at all of these applicants, I don't think anyone, if we all agree that don't select the best of the worst, or, just settle saying, oh, well, maybe they're good enough, right? So every time you make that type of decision, then that long goal, that long game of being this great place to work, you might have just put a challenge in your way of doing that, right? You might have just put somebody on your team that isn't going to help you get to that being that great organization, that great department, because you settled. So that's going to negatively impact your applicant pool in the long game, is when we settle on each hire. So we want to treat all applicants very, very well, give them the great experience during that process, whether they're selected or not. And also, we don't want to just select the best of the worst, or somebody who's not a great fit just to fill the position. Now, when we're in times of hiring stress, we can want to fill those positions, right? We might want to back off our criteria of, their behaviors and their attitude and those really important things, because they have skills that we want and need. But, we want the total package at the end of that selection process, and we want an applicant pool filled with people that have both the skills and qualifications as well as the behavior and attitudes. We don't want to settle on either end, right? So so it's costly to have a bad hire, right? And also, most of our employees would probably agree that they'd rather work short than work with a new employee that's just not the right, doesn't meet our requirements. So because there's investment of time and energy by the team and the leader and others to bring those people up, and we want to do that with the right candidate. So the long game, guys, is to work overtime diligently with strategies around improving your culture and becoming a great place to work. And there's lots of ways to do that. It's, what we do is help organizations do that, help leaders do that. And so, and employee-driven teams do that. So that's the long game, and that's really going to positively impact your applicant pool, the size of it and the quality of it. Okay, so that's where we're going. That's what we want. But in the meantime, these other tactics might help us get started in creating a better applicant pool and getting those positions filled with the right people. Okay. So thank you all for your time and attention today. It's been a pleasure to spend this bit of time with you on this important topic of your applicant pool and being a great place to work. And if you want more information about our services, about what we do and how we do it to help either entire organizations or a division or part of an organization or even an individual leader in a department to be able to make transformational change to greatness, we have lots of information available on our services at our website, capstoneleadership.net. There's also a place there where you can schedule a call, book a call with us. Sometimes getting to greatness starts with just a phone call. And so maybe we'll hear from you soon. Take care, everyone.